Thou shalt not make 10 Commandment jokes.
Hey everybody, it's your old pal Wood Doofus here. I'm wearing my green because it's St. Patrick's Day today, and on this week's project, I'm going to be making a TV stand for my friend Staniel. I just got back from the Home Depot. I got some 2x6s, some 2x4s, some fencing boards. Just hit that thing really hard. Some fencing boards, and I got some dowels I'm gonna screw around with, and I have a baseboard over there. I think this is everything as far as wood materials that I'm gonna need. Let's get started on this thing. So the top of the TV stand is gonna be made out of the 2x6s. So I want the two breadboard ends to be 5 inches each. So I'm gonna cut them down, or I'm going to rip off the two sides there, and then there's going to be 4 boards that are going to equal 18 inches. So each board will be ripped down on each side to 4.5 inches. And so it'll be 63 inches total, so 53 inches for these boards. Let's get to cutting. Alright, just cross cut all of my 2x6s to their rough dimensions. So now I'm going to joint one edge of each of these and flip them and cut the final width dimension. Or I'm going to rip it, not cut it, whatever you want to call it. Alright, so now all the 2x6s are cut to their final dimensions. Crap. I think I cut these to the wrong dimension. These are supposed to be 5 inches and now they're 4.5. I don't know if that's going to work. Anyway, I might have to recut these pieces. Luckily, it's just the ends, so I have plenty of material to do that. For the side panels, I'm going to use 2x4s. So I'm going to cut the 2x4s in half for the 2 rails, or actually these are stiles. It's not really a door, but whatever you want to call these stupid things. I'm going to cut the 2x4 in half for these 2 parts, and this part too. And then the bottom's going to be a full-size 2x4, so 3.5 on this one, the bottom, 1.75 on the other 3 parts, and then there'll be boards down the middle. Deal with that later. So now for these materials, like this one right here, it's made to make the frame of the side panels, but I want to also to accept these cross panels for the sides. So I'm going to cut a rabbet out at about 3/4 inch, maybe like a 1/16 deeper than that, to make sure they sink all the way in and don't stick out at all, because I don't have to put drawers or anything, so they don't have to be perfectly flush, but I'd rather them be further in than sticking out. So all I have to do is set the fence on the table saw to 3/4 inch, and then set the height of the blade to 3/4 inch also. I marked where the rabbets are going to be taken off on each one of these pieces, because it does matter on these matching side pieces. They have to be taken out of opposite corners. So that's why I marked them. Alright, so here's a side panel mocked up. I got the rabbet all the way around, and the paneling for the sides will go in there. I got to cut that to size. I did know that this was going to happen, and I'm going to use some of the cutoffs to fill those in, but none of these gaps are going to be visible on the final product. So gluing in a little plug should be sufficient for that. So now I just have to measure this distance and cut these panels and then assemble it. So I got to cut a lot of these pieces for the side panels at 13 5/8 inches. So I went ahead and set a stop block so they're all consistent, as long as I don't push against it too hard and knock it out of place. I do that all the time because I'm a wood doofus. Okay, so we're gonna start assembling the side pieces now. I have the first one done already, and I will show you how I did it when I make the second one. I just bought this self-centering dowel jig, and it's worked out pretty good. It hasn't been perfect because some of the material has this L rabbit. Some of the material has this rabbit cut out of it, which makes it difficult for a self-centering jig. So I have to kind of make it up as I go along. Luckily, on half of it, it does self-center and works perfectly. I'm going to be using 1/4 inch dowels. So I got my 1/4 inch bushings in there. Bushings. And I got my 1/4 inch drill bit. And somewhere around here, I got 1/4 inch dowels too. I put the tape to mark the depth of the drill bit so it doesn't go too far down. Alright, so let's move on to the other side. This other side is more complicated because it's not going to be centered on this piece. It's going to be along the edge to match this edge. So I opened it up basically as wide as I could get it to go to the edge with just a little lip hanging off. I can still put it flush so I can match up the holes. I tried clamping it, but it didn't really line up right, so I'm just going to hold it and hope for the best. Yeah, let's see how we did. Ooh, that doesn't look too bad. It's got a little bit extra lip. It's a little, oh no, you can twist it right into place. I'll take that. I might be able to adjust it to fix that hang off. I think I got all the dowel holes finally drilled and adjusted as needed, so now it's time for the glue up. Alright, now while that's setting, we're gonna start sanding off the rough sides of these fence boards, starting with 80 grit and then 120 grit. Now that everything's sanded, it's time to put the glue down and put the panels on. All right, flip it over and hit this sharp edge with a round over. Okay, now that we got both of these side panels made and brought them down all the way from Mount Sinai, we can get started on the stretchers.
Thou shalt not make 10 Commandment jokes.
Alright, so we have the two side panels here, and instead of 63 inches, since I messed up the cuts of the top, we're going to knock it down to 62 inches for the base. So we have stretchers, 2 on the bottom, 2 in the middle for the shelf, and 2 on the top. And the bottom is going to be 3.5 inches, and the other 2 are going to be half of a 2x4 basically. And they are going to be 62 minus 3 inches from the sides, which equals 59 inches. So let's cut those. So I'll probably attach the bottom stringers with just a butt joint and screws going through the end grain. But darn it, this is too tall. There we go. For the shelf and the top two rails, or whatever you want to call those things, I am going to drill some pocket holes and use that kind of joinery just to simplify things. Now I have all the stretchers, so I have the bottom stretchers, the top stretchers, and for the middle stretchers, they're going to be accepting the shelf, so I went ahead and cut another one of these rabbets just like I did on the side panel pieces. Now it's time to assemble the stretchers to the side panels. All right, let's talk about dimensions here for just a moment. I just clamped some 14-inch scraps right here, so the bottom shelf will have 14 inches of clearance. Now this is a 36-inch high unit, and my friend Staniel, he loves the video games. So on top of this console, there's gonna be like a 60-inch TV or something crazy like that. And on the first shelf, I believe, he's gonna have all the coolest new consoles on there. So I looked up the dimensions for the PS5, the Xbox X series, and I made sure that this first shelf, or the top shelf, is gonna be the right dimensions to fit those consoles both in height and depth, with a little bit of cords coming out of the back. So the bottom shelf is gonna have about 14 inches of clearance, and the top shelf is gonna have about 17.5 inches of clearance, and that's gonna clear all those fancy new consoles for Staniel. So while the glue dries on the cabinet, let's turn our attention to the top for a little while. We've already cut these out at the beginning of the video, and they're jointed so they have a pretty good seam without a lot of gaps there. And I am going to be using this self-centering dowel jig again, and luckily this time it will be used for its intended use, so it should be a lot easier. The first thing I had to do to make sure that the dowels line up is mark some lines along the front. And I think I'm gonna mark like 5 lines, and that'll be, each line will be for 2 dowels, so about 10 dowels per thing. 10 dowels per joint. So now that all the lines are drawn, we can start drilling the dowel holes. So I finally got these two together, but it took a little bit longer than I thought it would. The problem I was running into is that this self-centering doweling jig isn't actually self-centering. When I would put it on one board and then transfer it to the other board without changing any direction, it didn't line up quite right. So what I discovered that if I put it on the first board and then I flip it around and put it on the second board, it lines up a little bit better. And so this is acceptable now, but self-centering isn't quite as centering as it claims to be. I think this is one of those Chinese knockoffs. So if you want to buy something like this, make sure it's made in America, because this one isn't quite right. Alright, I really messed this measurement up. I had the top supposed to measure 62 inches and the base was supposed to measure 60 inches. This is actually a picture of the top that says 63. I took out the 1 inch and that's supposed to be 62. This is supposed to be 60, so 60 minus 3 would have been 57, not 59. So this isn't lined up right. It's like space here. It really sucks, but I'm gonna attempt to rip off all these stretchers that are glued down and cut 2 inches off of all of them. I ended up not liking the original stain that I put on there. It was just the blue stain on top of raw wood, and it really just was looking bad. So I decided to go with my original idea of burning it and putting the stain on top, which I think looked a lot better. I tried to cover these side panels with aluminum foil and aluminum foil tape because I thought I could preserve that look, but it didn't work out very well. Once I started to burn it, the tape caught on fire, and I realized it was the adhesive in the tape that was burning, and so I had to scrap that idea and just go ahead and give everything a burned look. I ended up sanding everything that will be visible down, all the way back down to the wood, and then burning it, and then restaining it. But I think the end result is a lot nicer than it was before, so I'm happy it worked out. I'm gonna screw some stringers onto the back for both shelves. That's gonna allow for some space right here for cords to go through, so everything can be plugged in. It's also gonna allow for a place for the back panel to get accepted. Alright, I got all the beadboard stained and polished. Now it's time to start pinning it on the back. Alright, so as I'm finishing this thing up, I was actually in a hurry because Staniel was on his way to pick it up and I couldn't get the final filming in. I still had to add the baseboard, which I did. So here's a picture of the baseboard right before it got stapled on. Here's a picture of me attaching the top. Staniel took this blurry image of me when he came to pick it up. He sent me some pictures. I put in some LED lights around the bottom or around the inside of the top shelf, and it really worked out well. Staniel even sent me some video footage of how the LED lights will activate to any music that you play around it, which was pretty cool. And I asked Staniel to send me some pictures, and he sent me a picture of some stuff he was watching on TV. That was interesting. And he sent me a picture of his Batmobile on the shelf. So I guess photography is not really Staniel's strong suit. So these are the pictures that I got. But the good news is that Staniel really likes it. I added on a 9-outlet power strip on the underside of the back lip of the top, which really worked out because he has a lot of stuff to plug in. And of course I left those 2 slits for all the cords that need to go through, so none of them show, but they all have access to that power strip. But anyway, I appreciate everybody watching this video. I'm glad Staniel was happy with this project, and I'm happy with it too. So until next time, don't be afraid to be a doofus.